He's one of the most famous and most talked about movie makers alive. Quentin Tarantino doesn't ignore people quietly. He doesn't slowly push them away. When he drops an actor, it's big, loud, messy, and forever. Over 30 years of making movies like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Django Unchained, and Inglourious Basterds, he's created amazing stories on screen. But behind the cameras, the wrong fight can turn into a career-ending explosion. He's worked with famous actors like Uma Thurman, Samuel L. Jackson, Christoph Waltz, and Brad Pitt. But not everyone got to come back into his world. Today, we tell you about the 6 actors Quentin Tarantino hated working with and why he never looked back. Number 1. Bruce Willis. In 1994, Pulp Fiction didn't just change movies, it brought back careers. John Travolta was pulled back from being forgotten. Samuel L. Jackson became a legend. And Bruce Willis, whose star power had been getting weaker, suddenly had new life. For Willis, it should have been the best comeback ever. He'd just gone through a bunch of movies that didn't do well. Color of Night, Striking Distance, Hudson Hawk, and then along came Quentin Tarantino, a young, exciting director who gave him Butch Coolidge, the aging boxer who refuses to lose a fight on purpose. It was the kind of role actors dream of. Tough, famous, unforgettable, but something between them never worked. Behind the scenes, Willis's smart-mouth attitude and Hollywood swagger clashed with Tarantino's crazy intensity. Quentin's scripts are holy, word for word, beat for beat. He's a director who demands total obedience to the page. Willis, by contrast, came from the old school of movie stardom, where making things up and pure charm could bend a scene to his will. He brought star power. Tarantino wanted submission. Crew members remembered the tension being almost physical, unspoken, but heavy in the air. Tarantino reportedly found Willis too self-aware, a performer who never quite disappeared into his roles. To Quentin, acting is about vanishing into the story. Willis, in his eyes, was still Bruce Willis, die-hard smirk and all. The chemistry never sparked. Unlike Jackson or Travolta, who became Tarantino's repeat workers and lifelong friends, Willis remained an outsider. No bonding, no second calls, and Tarantino's silence said everything. In interviews, he often talked excitedly about the Pulp Fiction cast. Yet, when Bruce's name came up, he went around it, praising the film without praising the man. It wasn't open hatred. It was erasing. For a director who loves to reuse his favorites like a theater company, the absence spoke volumes. Uma Thurman, Tim Roth, Michael Madsen, all came back again and again. Bruce Willis, one and done. Willis, for his part, played it cool. He never said bad things about Tarantino, but tellingly, he also never got excited about Pulp Fiction as the important film that restarted his career. For most actors, that role would be a lifelong talking point. For Willis, it became just another credit on a long resume. The result was a Cold War of sorts. No insults traded in public, but no love either. In Tarantino's universe, loyalty earns you legacy. Step out of rhythm and you're gone. And that's exactly what happened. Bruce Willis lit up one film, stole a few scenes, and then vanished from Tarantino's movie world without a trace. Today, there's no feud in the tabloid sense. No public jabs, no dramatic reunions, just silence. Tarantino doesn't mention him. Willis never looks back. And in Hollywood, where silence is often louder than words, that's the final verdict. Quentin Tarantino didn't just cut Bruce Willis out of his future films, he cut him out of his memory. Number 2, Lawrence Tierney. If there's one thing Quentin Tarantino has never put up with, it's chaos on his set. He thrives on intensity, precision, and energy. Every line of dialogue is sacred. Every beat carefully placed. For him, filmmaking is a controlled explosion, violent, stylish, but never messy. So when he brought in Lawrence Tierney, the stone-faced legend from the old crime movies, to play Joe Cabot in Reservoir Dogs 1992, it seemed like perfect casting. Tierney had the kind of on-screen scariness Tarantino worshipped. The veteran, tough guy as the father figure of the heist crew. Perfect, until the cameras rolled. Behind the scenes, Tierney wasn't just difficult, he was explosive. Crew members remembered him forgetting lines, snapping at assistants, and arguing endlessly with Tarantino. Michael Madsen later admitted that Tierney's presence changed the entire energy of the set. Every day became a gamble. Could we get through the scene before Tierney exploded? The breaking point came during a famous screaming match over where to stand. Tarantino tried to redirect him. Tierney stormed off set. Tarantino followed and fired him on the spot. Later, Quentin didn't sugarcoat it. "It was like dealing with your senile uncle who's off his medication," he told an interviewer. That wasn't exaggeration. Other cast members nodded in agreement. The young director was only 29, making his first feature, but he didn't hesitate. He had written the part for Tierney, and yet when the atmosphere turned toxic, he cut him out emotionally long before the cameras finished rolling. Tierney, for his part, didn't take it quietly. He dismissed Tarantino's dialogue as confusing and repetitive. In one confrontation, when Quentin grabbed his arm to get his attention, Tierney shoved him away and barked, "Get your blank hands off me." Tarantino snapped back with equal fury. "F you. You fat blank, you are blank fired. Take your fat blank butt off my blank set." The crew erupted in applause. For them, the firing wasn't just deserved. It was overdue. Things only got darker. Within days, Tierney was arrested after allegedly firing a shotgun at his own nephew in a drunken rage. The production scrambled to get him temporarily released so his scenes could be finished. But for Tarantino, the decision was already made. Lawrence Tierney would never be part of his movie universe again, and he kept that promise. When Reservoir Dogs became a cult classic, Tarantino spoke fondly of Roth, Keitel, Madsen, and Buscemi. But about Tierney, nothing. No stories, no tributes, not even a passing mention. It was as if Tierney had been erased from history. For Quentin Tarantino, loyalty is cinematic. Betrayal is too. And once you cross the line with him, you don't just get cut, you get rewritten. Lawrence Tierney never returned to a Tarantino film. Not for a cameo, not for a reunion, not even for a nostalgic nod. The silence has lasted decades. And in Hollywood, silence is the loudest kind of hatred. Number 3. George Clooney. On paper, Quentin Tarantino and George Clooney looked like they should have been friends. In 1996, From Dusk Till Dawn brought them together. Clooney, fresh off his ER stardom, stepping into his first major post-television role, and Tarantino flexing his genre-bending muscles as both screenwriter and co-star. The film became a cult classic, a vampire crime fever dream that showcased both men at pivotal moments in their careers. But that collaboration would be the first and the last. Years later, Tarantino made it clear why. In an interview, he didn't hedge. He didn't soften. He fired a bullet straight at Clooney's reputation. George Clooney is not a movie star. No nuance, no sarcasm, just the line delivered with the same sharp edge that has defined Tarantino's career. He doubled down, challenging audiences to name me a Clooney movie since the millennium that's truly great. For Clooney, who had built his career on hits like Ocean's 11, Syriana, and Michael Clayton, the jab was more than just disrespect. It was dismissal. Clooney didn't let it slide. In a recent GQ interview alongside Brad Pitt, he finally fired back. "Quentin said some blank about me recently, so I'm a little irritated by him." He did some interview where he was naming movie stars, and when they asked about me, he goes, "He's not a movie star." Then he literally said, "Name me a movie since the millennium." And I was like, since the millennium? That's kind of my whole blank career. So now I'm like, all right, dude, blank off. I don't mind giving him crap. The exchange revealed a clash of philosophies. Tarantino, a purist, prizes actors who disappear completely into roles. Chameleons like Christoph Waltz, shapeshifters like Samuel L. Jackson, or the raw, dangerous energy of Tim Roth. To him, Clooney was too polished, too safe, too much of the Hollywood system. Red carpet charm, bankable face, reliable box office, not dangerous enough, not raw enough, not Tarantino. Clooney, meanwhile, saw himself differently. His career wasn't built on shock value or grindhouse grit. It was versatility from comedies like Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? To prestige dramas like Michael Clayton. In his eyes, Tarantino's critique wasn't just wrong, it was simplistic. And that's why their partnership froze in place. After From Dusk Till Dawn, Clooney never appeared in another Tarantino script. Not a cameo, not a nod, not even a hint of reunion. For a director who recycles his favorite actors like a theater company, that silence speaks louder than words. The feud never escalated into open war, but it never healed either. Tarantino doesn't mention Clooney. Clooney doesn't praise Tarantino. Their careers run parallel, never intersecting. Clooney's stars soared. Oscars, directing credits, global recognition. Tarantino built his own mythos, delivering great films but between them only distance. And in Tarantino's world, being erased is worse than being insulted. To this day, George Clooney remains outside the Tarantino universe, not with drama, with dismissal. And in Hollywood, that's the final cut. Number 4. Steve Buscemi. When Quentin Tarantino cast Steve Buscemi as Mr. Pink in Reservoir Dogs 1992, it was lightning in a bottle. Buscemi's manic wit, jittery energy, and cynical worldview turned a side character into the soul of the film's most memorable rant. That "I don't tip waitresses" scene. It didn't just define Mr. Pink, it became a cornerstone of Tarantino's debut, a scene studied, quoted, and endlessly debated. But what should have been the beginning of a long creative partnership quickly dissolved into something far more complicated. Unlike Michael Madsen, Tim Roth, Uma Thurman, or Samuel L. Jackson, all of whom became recurring players in Tarantino's movie universe, Buscemi never came back. No cameo in Pulp Fiction, no role in Kill Bill, no second shot at Tarantino's mythology. For a director who treats his favorite actors like a stock company, the absence was glaring. Behind the scenes, whispers began to circulate. The most enduring theory pointed back to Reservoir Dogs itself. According to some crew members, Buscemi's infamous no-tipping speech wasn't just a scripted bit of dark comedy. It reflected conversations he'd had off-camera where he expressed similar skepticism about the ritual of tipping. Tarantino, who wrote the monologue as satire, a critique of selfishness, reportedly bristled at the idea that Buscemi might actually share those views. Years later, Tarantino's quip captured the cold distance between them. "If Buscemi ever wants back into one of my films, he'll have to play a waiter." What sounded like a joke was really a dismissal. And when pressed about why Buscemi wasn't invited back for later films, Tarantino delivered a line as sharp as one of his movie deaths. "Sometimes people get one shot. That's the story." For Buscemi, who had helped launch Tarantino's career with that perfect turn as Mr. Pink, the answer felt like erasing. Yet Buscemi never lashed out. In interviews, he remained surprisingly gracious. "I haven't heard from Quentin in a long time, but I wish him well." It was polite, but it spoke volumes. The respect was still there, but the bond was gone. What makes the rift even more striking is that Tarantino once worshipped Buscemi. He recalled being blown away by his early work in Parting Glances, describing the performance as so raw he wasn't even sure it was acting. "His acting was so real, I didn't know if Steve Buscemi was actually an actor." Tarantino later admitted he wrote Mr. Pink for himself, until Buscemi's audition was so strong that he gave it away. After filming, Tarantino's own producer, Monte Hellman, called Buscemi's performance flawless. And yet, despite all of that admiration, Tarantino never picked up the phone again. Buscemi, of course, didn't need him. His career soared on its own path. Fargo, The Big Lebowski, Con Air, and later the Golden Globe-winning Boardwalk Empire. He became Hollywood's go-to for eccentric brilliance, proving again and again that he could anchor a story. But in Tarantino's carefully curated universe, he vanished. No cameos, no callbacks, not even a nostalgic nod. Today, there's no public feud, no insults traded, no dramatic falling out, just silence. And in Quentin Tarantino's world, silence is often the loudest form of rejection. Steve Buscemi lit the match with Reservoir Dogs. He gave Tarantino his first unforgettable rant, a monologue that still echoes 30 years later. But for Quentin Tarantino, that fire burned once, and once was enough. Number 5. Warren Beatty. Of all the names Quentin Tarantino has locked out of his movie universe, Warren Beatty might be the most surprising. Both men were legends in their own right. Tarantino, the enfant terrible of the 1990s, reshaping cinema with blood and bravado. Beatty, the Hollywood icon whose cool had defined an entire generation, On paper, their collaboration should have been electric. Instead, it fizzled into silence. Beatty was almost Bill. Not just any Bill, the Bill in Kill Bill. Tarantino tailored the role for him, shaping its poetic menace, quiet gravitas, and operatic edge around Beatty's larger-than-life presence. It was meant to be a grand comeback, a fusion of old Hollywood elegance with Tarantino's genre-bending chaos, but it never happened. From their earliest meetings, creative control became the wedge. Beatty, an acclaimed director himself, wanted input, edits, tonal shifts, adjustments that would bend the film toward his vision. Tarantino wasn't interested. He wasn't writing a collaboration. He was writing a revenge opera. And in Tarantino's world, every scene, every word, every cut belongs to him. David Carradine, who ultimately replaced Beatty, described the clash bluntly. Warren was trying to direct the director, and Quentin doesn't play that. The fallout came quietly, but decisively. Tarantino never blasted Beatty in the press, but his words, carefully chosen, sharp as glass, said enough. When asked later about the change in casting, he brushed it off with a single line. "It wasn't going to work. I needed someone who understood it wasn't their story." That quote revealed everything. In Tarantino's eyes, Beatty wasn't just disagreeing. He was threatening the very authorship of the film. And so, the part was taken from Beatty's hands and placed into Carradine's. No press release, no public fallout, just a silent eraser. Carradine would later recall that Tarantino seemed energized after letting Beatty go, like a weight had been lifted. Beatty never responded. No interviews, no bitterness, no rebuttal, just absence. For a man known for charm and charisma, his silence spoke volumes. And that silence has lasted. In the decades since Kill Bill, Tarantino and Beatty have never crossed paths again. Not in panels, not in interviews, not in casual tributes. In an industry that thrives on reconciliations and second chances, that kind of clean break is rare. What remains is the residue of what could have been. Tarantino's Bill became Carradine's most iconic late-career role, a tragic villain immortalized in pop culture. Beatty, meanwhile, moved on, but his name became a ghost in Tarantino's history. Never acknowledged, never revisited. For Tarantino, the principle was simple. His films aren't up for negotiation. For Beatty, the silence was its own kind of dignity. And that was the end of Warren Beatty in Tarantino's world. Number 6. Spike Lee. Among all of Quentin Tarantino's public feuds, none burned brighter or cut deeper than his war of words with Spike Lee. On the surface, the two filmmakers had reasons to admire each other. In the mid-90s, they even did. Tarantino once praised Lee's She's Gotta Have It for its impact on black audiences, and Lee called Tarantino's early scripts fresh. Tarantino even appeared in Lee's Girl 6. But whatever mutual respect existed collapsed in 1997 when Jackie Brown hit theaters. Spike Lee, never one to bite his tongue, took direct aim at Tarantino's dialogue, specifically his repeated use of the N-word. "I'm not against the word," Lee said, "and I use it, but Quentin is infatuated with the word. What does he want to be? Made an honorary black man." It wasn't just criticism. It was a shot at Tarantino's entire artistic philosophy. Tarantino's response was as blunt as his films. "If Spike Lee can't appreciate Jackie Brown, then I'm sorry for him. He has no right to tell any other artist what they can or cannot say." Then came the line that dominated headlines. "Spike needs to shut the blank up." From that moment, the rift wasn't creative. It was personal. 15 years later, the feud reignited with Django Unchained. Lee condemned the movie outright, calling it disrespectful to my ancestors, and went further. He refused to even watch it. For him, the film wasn't bold. It was blasphemy. Tarantino fired back with even more venom. "I think his problem is that I'm doing it better than he is," he told a reporter. "He's just mad because I'm making the black movies he wishes he could make." That wasn't disagreement. That was war. Behind the scenes, Tarantino admitted he was furious that Lee went public instead of approaching him privately. He even told one interviewer that he was ready to fight if Lee ever confronted him face to face. Since then, there's been no reconciliation, no handshake, no panel appearances, not even the polite nod of mutual respect at award shows. Both men remain giants in their fields, but their paths never cross. Not in collaboration, not in interviews, not even in mutual praise. Spike Lee has moved forward, defending his right to call out what he sees as exploitation. Tarantino has stood his ground, defending his right to write whatever language his characters demand. Neither man has budged, and that one line, "He's just mad because I'm making the black movies he wishes he could make," still hangs in the air like a scar neither will acknowledge. It wasn't just offensive, it was final. In the end, these clashes weren't just about movies. They were about ego, vision, and the uncompromising fire that drives Quentin Tarantino. From Lawrence Tierney's on-set explosions to Spike Lee's public firestorm, from Bruce Willis's Hollywood swagger to Warren Beatty's demands for control, Tarantino drew hard lines and never looked back. 6 actors entered his orbit, but none returned, and their absences speak louder than any scene they filmed. Which of these feuds shocked you the most? Do you think Tarantino was right to cut ties, or did he let pride get in the way of greatness? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more untold stories in the future. See you in the next